Welcome to Drive Time Live, the Mills Crenshaw Show on talkradio1.us. And for those of you who are listening on your computer, thank you very much for that. And for those of you who are listening on your phone, all you have to do to talk on the air is dial 5, and we welcome your call. It's been fascinating to talk to people following the great debate last night. And it was fascinating because who the winner was depends entirely on who you talk with. I wanted to get a balanced view, so I switched back and forth last night between Fox and CNN. And it was like two different debates. CNN was totally in the tank for Hillary. They were even caught trying to preload undecided voters who were in their audience on what to say and what to think. We'll get back to that story, but it was amazing. And one of the things that was very shocking to me was the fact that the moderators didn't even pretend to be unbiased. Their attacks on Trump were obvious. Their interruptions were obvious. The only thing that was worse than that was maybe what we heard on the vice president's debate. We're trying to bring that up as I speak. I'm sorry for the hesitation, but we do have a recording of the vice presidential debate and all of the interruptions from the Democrat. And my producer's trying to bring that to you as we speak. We ordinarily don't countenance dead air, and it's only because we had some problems. But we should have that solved momentarily. What was your impression of the debate last night? Now, I really am far more interested in your view than my view. Do I have? Oh yeah, I have a very decided view on the so-called debate. But I'm more interested in your view, and if you want to share that, and you're not yet on your phone, just dial 701-801-0829. I'll give you that again more slowly. 701-801-0829. Then when you hear the show on your phone, dial 5, and that will immediately bring you up on our computer, and we can chat. I will look forward to hearing what your view of last night's debate consists of. But I noticed that there were a lot of...
Senator,
here we go.
Like Ronald Reagan's plan from 1980. Love Russia. You both
their heavy-handed approach.
You both have said Vladimir Putin is a
Gentlemen,
better
we're going to get to Russia.
Yeah, Elaine, thank you, thank you, Senator.
These guys have praised Vladimir Putin as a great leader.
We will
How
get
can
to
they
that,
defend
Senator.
that?
We do have
And paid a few taxes and lost $1 billion a year. You are Donald Trump's apprentice. Let me talk about this
Senator,
issue. Okay, now I can weigh in.
She had a private server
I get to weigh in
that
now. Let
was
me just say this.
discovered overrun by ISIS. Because Hillary Clinton failed to renegotiate.
More American troops
Hillary
in Iraq,
Clinton,
you could
Hillary
you can propose
Clinton
that.
forces agreement.
No, that is incorrect.
And so we remove, was able to be conjured up in that vacuum.
But I'd like to
And
correct
over
the
the slowest
Every time you hear the
recovery
ding
since
is
the
an
Great
interruption.
15 million, and the poverty
Stepped
level
into the
and the
Oval
median
Office. We have the
income
lowest-
improved
look,
dramatically
look,
between
you-
2014. Not
it's
to give
not
away tax
more
relief to the
spending.
folks at the top.
And so
I am interested
Governor-
to hearing whether he'll defend his running mates not releasing taxes.
Yeah,
That's when he
country.
releases tax returns.
Well, we're answering because he's created a business that's worth billions of dollars today.
How do you know that? And let me
Taxes,
talk
sales
about that.
taxes.
Senator, I'm going
He said he
The
would release it.
American- the issue the
Richard
American people
Nixon
care
released
about,
tax returns when he was
They're
under
going to
audit.
raise you. All Donald Trump,
Go
all
read the
Donald
book.
Trump, they roll out, scare
But you
the
have a
seniors.
voting
It goes
record.
I
on
did all of that.
and on
I
and
just-
on.
I-
72 times he interrupted. Cain was like a spoiled child. And the only thing that came out of that was that the Republican candidate for vice president proved himself to be very, very presidential. In fact, there are many who of late really are wishing that he were the candidate instead of Trump. And that brings us to one of the questions that has arisen. What was your impression of Trump last night? Apparently, our own Republican leaders here in the state of Utah, I'm talking about a congressman, a senator, and our governor, have failed to get behind the Republican. Now, I understand what he said in that video that is 11 years old was crude, rude, and obnoxious. No ifs, ands, or buts. And there are those who, in a moment of self-righteousness, are refusing to back him because of something he said 11 years ago. Let me tell you why that troubles me to my core. Most of the people who are walking away from Donald Trump are doing so because of what he said 11 years ago. Now, I'm certainly not a perfect man. I don't know any in this life. I've known some awfully good people. And I know many really good people now, but perfect they're not. And people who profess to understand the gospel of Jesus Christ, who walk away from somebody for something they said 11 years ago, which they regret, and which they have repented of, as witnessed last night by Trump's apology, his saying that he was ashamed of the things that he said, that he has apologized for them and repented of them. He also made it clear those were things he said, not things that he did. In sharp contrast, the other presidential candidate, while she did not participate in those things herself, her husband acted on those gross statements, and she attacked his victims. She has not said she is sorry for that. She has not repented, and yet our country is in more peril now than perhaps they ever thought it could be or would be. Now let me give you some examples. Here, there were, look, Trump was pretty tough on Hillary Clinton last night. There's no question he asked some timely issues and some timely questions. But there were a ton of questions that he did not ask. Just a few. If I had been the moderator, it probably would have gone something like this. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start the first questions with you, Mrs. Clinton. When you were Secretary of State, why did you let a Russian company purchase 1/2 of the United States uranium reserves? No answer. How much money was donated by Russian companies to your foundation? When you worked for the State Department, did you conduct secret classified businesses without using a secure email server? What kind of assault weapons were you funneling through Benghazi to ISIS in Syria before Ambassador Stevens was murdered? Why were you interested in the overthrow of Assad in Syria? When you left the White House after your husband's last term as president, why did you steal $200,000 worth of furniture, china, and artwork that you were forced to return? Mrs. Clinton, when you were Secretary of State, why did you solicit contributions from foreign governments for the Clinton Foundation after you promised President Obama you would not do so? Mrs. Clinton, why do you and your husband claim to contribute millions of dollars to charity for a tax write-off when it actually goes to your own family foundation that gives out less than 15% of the funds you collect, and you use the balance to support yourself tax-free in a very elaborate lifestyle? Mrs. Clinton, why are you unable to account for $6 billion of State Department funds that seem to have disappeared while you were Secretary of State? Don't you have accounting in place? Mrs. Clinton, why did you say you were broke when you left the White House, but you purchased a $2 million home, built an addition for the Secret Service, and charged the taxpayers of the United States rent in an amount equal to the entire mortgages? And Mrs. Clinton, how is it that your daughter Chelsea can afford to buy a $10.5 million apartment in New York City shortly after you left the White House? And speaking of Chelsea, it's a little curious. How is it her first paying job in her late 20s was for more than the entire salary of the President of the United States? Was there a quid pro quo of any sort involved? Now, Mrs. Clinton, why did you lie to the American people about the terrorist attack in Benghazi, but managed to tell the truth to your daughter and a foreign ambassador the same night it was happening, and then you also lied to the families of the victims who died there? Finally, Mrs. Clinton, why did you lose your law license? Why did your husband lose his? Oh, yes, one more thing. What actually happened to Ron Brown when he was about to testify against you and your husband? Mrs. Clinton? Mrs. Clinton? No answer. We have a caller. Let's go to that caller in the 801 area, prefix 363. Caller, your first name, please. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Welcome. Your first
Hey,
name?
Mills, you're recycling your greatest hits. Did Hillary Clinton buy, or Bill Clinton buy, the $10 million apartment for Chelsea?
Not to my understanding. That was
Who bought it?
my My recollection is that she bought it.
Well, yeah, she was married. Her husband had made $40 million from Goldman Sachs and then another venture capital company before that. So I don't even think it was her money, as I understand it.
Well,
I mean,
that certainly.
A $10 million apartment's a pretty nice deal, but I'm not sure if that shows some kind of perfidy on the part of the Clintons that their kid married well.
No, I would agree. The question is, how did he make that kind of money in Goldman Sachs when Goldman Sachs and most of the investment firms are losing money in the market?
That's not true, Mills, and he didn't make it lately. He made it in the 5 or 10 years ago.
Okay, well, that's
he
certainly...
he made it as a venture capitalist. He's making $2.5 million now, I believe, at Goldman Sachs, which would pay, a little bit of walking around money. But my recollection was that I think Fortune magazine said he made 20 or 30 million in a separate venture capital company before he went to Goldman Sachs. So it was his money.
Well, he could
before you get
certainly
all in
afford...
a twist, you might want to get some facts straight on the thing.
The questions that I asked were straight. Your answer would be certainly acceptable as far as the Chelsea's purchase. It doesn't explain why, while Hillary was Secretary of State, that a Russian company was allowed to buy 1/2 of the United States uranium reserves.
And you know that how?
Because it was on Google.
Oh, well, if it was on Google, it must be true. Hey, let me ask you a question about Donald Trump and his difficulties with his zipper.
I don't know of any difficulties with his zipper. I do know
well,
that
he certainly boasted about them on that old video that he and Jeb Bush's cousin Billy, who was working for, what was it, Entertainment Tonight at the time, got leaked to the Washington Post on Friday.
How long ago was that?
Pardon me?
How long ago was that?
I think it was in 85 or 86, or I'm sorry, 2005 or 2006, I believe.
11 years ago.
Yeah. And how long ago did Bill Clinton commit all of his transgressions? That was about
now,
5 years.
I'm glad you asked that question, because the difference is Bill Clinton committed acts and Trump was bragging. As he referred to it, it was locker room talk. He did not...
Well, it wasn't in a locker room, and Trump wasn't saying he was bragging. Trump was boasting about the stuff he did. I mean, he was confessing. That would be something that would, if he was ever prosecuted, it'd be used to prosecute him.
What are your... How do you justify that statement when last night, as recently as last night, he said that he was ashamed of what he said, that it was locker room talk, that it was all talk, no action? So where do you get your facts?
I've never thought of, based on a whole lot of evidence, that Donald Trump was exactly the paragon of truth. But I was wondering if he has sincerely repented of this. I mean, the question for the Christian right to answer is, who would Jesus grope? I mean, if Jesus was going to grope somebody, who would it be? Because Donald was talking about who he was groping. He was confessing to it. I mean, Donald is, after all, the only guy in the history of the Republic, I think, who has brought up the size of his penis as a controversial point in a Republican debate, which he did about a year ago.
I don't remember that. I remember a discussion about the size of a competitor's hands, which...
Well, and then he went on to talk about how, and just because you think I've got hands doesn't mean nothing else is small. It's really good. That was what he said. I mean, unless you were totally witless, you knew exactly what he was talking about. I mean,
the thing I find interesting is how it is in your mind that it had one connotation when it could have been an elbow, a knee,
Oh, Mills, you're reaching now. Come on, please. I mean, you knew, anybody who watched that knew exactly what he was talking about, and he got abused with small hand jokes forever.
Yeah, I certainly suspected that, but I don't claim to have firsthand knowledge such as you
saw it on
seem to
TV,
have.
didn't you?
He didn't
When
say
he was
what
winking
you
and
have
mugging
implied he
how
said.
penis is?
He did
I mean,
not
that was-
say what you are implying he said. Did he? Did he?
Well,
Did he?
Well, so when and if, and I'm assuming it's more a matter of when than if, we see more of this stuff come out, and it's already leaking apparently out of the Apprentice TV show and that he made, and Geraldo Rivera says he's got lots of tapes of Donald saying incredibly coarse things. He apparently is given in private, we didn't see this over the weekend, but he's given in private to calling blacks niggers. I mean, that's the way Donald is. He's a fun-loving guy. And I'm just wondering, is there some point where you've got a gag reflex that's going to kick in on this? Because I always thought that, living in Salt Lake City, most of the LDS people, at least the ones I know, are pretty conservative about this stuff. And
well, let me tell you how conservative. Let me tell you
Donald Trump the last 3 or 4 days, as have a heck of a lot of other Republicans.
You know something? You are almost as crude, rude, and obnoxious as Trump was. The difference is, wait just a minute.
It's a challenge on where our dialogue should be.
Just a moment. I'm going to tell you just how conservative I am since you raised the issue. I was, over a year ago, opposed to Trump. And the reason I was opposed to Trump is something that he wrote in his book. He wrote that he had bedded other men's wives. Now, I consider that to be personally a disqualification. However, he has apparently repented of these things, and unlike you, I don't judge my fellow man.
Well, he's repented of being caught about it for sure.
You're in a position to judge his mind. Is that what you're saying? You can read his mind?
I'm judging what he says on the record. I'm not judging his mind at all.
Okay, well, what he said last night was he was ashamed of the things that he said, that he had not done those things. He also admitted that it was crude, rude, and obnoxious, not in those exact words, but that was the meaning. And he apologized.
And you believe it?
Now, yeah, I believe him.
Okay, well,
who am I not to believe a man who says he is sorry for his mistakes and wishes to change them? Now, has Hillary ever apologized for her multitude of lies?
Well, I haven't heard any lies. I think she's probably, or she's definitely guilty of doing a bunch of dissembling about those emails, but I'm the position that who cares?
Oh, really? What about her statement to the victims in Benghazi that it was all because of a video, when on the very same night she told her own daughter and she told a foreign ambassador that it was a terrorist attack?
I actually heard her talk about that, and what she said, and I don't know whether I believe it or not, but it sounded semi-plausible. What she said was that the CIA cover story on what had happened in Benghazi was that this movie, this video, had caused it, and she did not think it was up to her to break the CIA cover story in public and let till the CIA decided that they were going to move on to something else. And so that was why she said that stuff to the family, was because that was the official U.S. government position, and she was a representative of the U.S. government. And I think that, I don't know if I believe it, as I say, but that's at least a plausible explanation, isn't it?
If you think it's plausible, to you it is.
Well, if she
I
said
don't buy
it.
it. I don't buy it at all. But that's okay. You're entitled to your opinion, and I appreciate the fact that you're sharing it. Now, here is the really important question. When Hillary, if she becomes president, when she takes office, she's already said the kind of chief justices she wishes to appoint, or the justices to the Supreme Court that she wants to appoint. And she is talking about basically attacking the Constitution. If she does take office, our country is toast. What will your position be then when you no longer have basic rights like the freedom of speech, the Second Amendment? In fact, basically all of the Bill of Rights will be gone when she has her liberal justices in place.
You're pulling all that stuff, Bills. You don't know that.
What's that?
Right-wingers have been screaming alarms about the Supreme Court screwing over the Constitution for 150 years, and left-wingers have been doing the same thing.
I haven't been doing it for 150 years. I've been doing it for quite a while, but I haven't.
Okay.
I don't claim 150 years.
Well, you're presenting that to me as if it's a fact that that's going to happen. Now, I don't think that
I heard her on a debate as early as this morning. It was recorded, of course, but I heard her referring to the Supreme Court as early as this morning. And she said that she wanted activist judges.
Okay. And we've got activists, got right-wing political leanings now. Is there anybody who doesn't think Scalia, for example, was an activist?
Oh, almost no one with any knowledge of the court believes that. He was an originalist. He believed in the Constitution of the United States. And he supported the Constitution of the United States.
Take Scalia and Roberts and the rest of the previous 5-person majority on the Supreme Court. Now, for example, they decided to throw out the campaign finance laws when the Citizens United.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Do you know why Citizens United was brought about originally?
Yeah, I do, but that wasn't the issue.
Wait a minute. It is the issue. Why was it a matter of law? Why had up until that decision, why was it that these cases were not being heard? I'll tell you why. It was
they did hear you.
No.
The court, Mills, can I speak, please?
Go ahead.
The court did hear Citizens United version of it, which was asking for a fairly narrow decision, and the court sent back Citizens United the case to the attorneys and told them to rewrite their briefs to throw out all of the laws. Now, I don't think that was a good idea. Personally, you may think something different, but that sure as heck looks like activism to me.
Okay, you fail to understand why the law was written originally anyway, and who did it. It was an attempt by the courts to prevent northern businesses from freeing the slaves. Originally, the law came into being because northern businesses were paying for propaganda in the South to overturn slavery.
That in an
attempt to deny the money to those people who were trying to free the slaves, the Southern activist and the Democrat Party, which was in power at the time, stopped the use of any contributions for political purposes by northern businesses. That's why it was overturned. Do you know who the party of the Ku Klux Klan was?
Who the party of the Ku Klux Klan was?
Yeah. There was one
Absolutely.
party.
Obviously, I do. I think I know a little history.
And who was that?
It was Nathan Bedford Forrest, the guy who did more to the starter than anything else, and he was a Democrat from, where was it, Alabama, I believe. It might have been Louisiana. I don't remember exactly where.
Yeah.
General Forrest started
you are correct.
Civil War.
You are correct.
Resisting.
And as a matter of fact, it was Bull Connors and the Democrats in the Deep South who, long after the Civil War, stood on the courthouse steps and tried to enforce segregation.
And Lyndon Johnson put up to that, absolutely, and when he did it, he knew he was going to cost the South to the Democratic Party for a generation. It ended up costing it for 2 generations, and Lyndon Johnson did that with his eyes open, and he thought it was worth it when they passed the Civil Rights Act.
Yes, I agree.
So there was no question that the Democratic Party in the South was gutted by Lyndon Johnson of Texas because they were such a bunch of racist thugs. And what did they do? They became racist thugs in the Republican Party in 1964 when Barry Goldwater carried all of the, or at least the heart of the Confederacy.
But Barry Goldwater was not a racist. He himself...
Barry Goldwater probably was not. You're right. But Goldwater was enough of a conservative, was enough of an anti-communist, and he was enough of a hysteric about anti-communism that he was able to toss out or to appeal to a very small number of Southern voters by saying, we don't want Social Security, we don't want Medicare, don't bother me about nuclear weapons control. General Curtis LeMay is fine with me if we're going to need to bomb stuff. And that was why Barry Goldwater got killed in the election by Lyndon Johnson, but why he was able to hold on to what was left of the Confederacy, who all of a sudden, with people like Strom Thurmond, for example, all became Republicans all of a sudden after they'd been Democrats all their lives. So
Look,
it's no great mystery.
Okay.
What happened to
I agree with your analysis of that part of history. And congratulations. There aren't a lot of people who really do know that part of history, and it makes me appreciate even more your call. Look, I've got to move on. We got another caller waiting, but I am grateful for your call. I will look forward to your next one. Thank you.
Good luck to your new station, Mills.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Let's go to the next caller in the 801 area. And this number is prefix 879. Caller, your first name, please.
Diana.
Welcome.
How are you doing, Mel?
I'm doing great. Did you happen to see the debate last night?
Yes, I did.
What was your reaction?
Hillary had her Joker face on again.
Say that again?
Hillary had her Joker smile on again.
Ah. Yeah.
No, I think Donald did really well. I know people are upset and judging him for something like you said happened 11 years ago. And I believe men say a lot of dirty stuff when they're together. It's too bad.
It is.
A lot of stuff they say it because they want it makes them look big.
Yeah. And
macho.
I can't fault him for what he said when he clearly, publicly has apologized and repented. I am deeply troubled by what he said he did. And I'm talking about his bragging about bedding other men's wives. That troubled me.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. But, they say a lot of stuff, and that they don't mean that they actually did it. And I'm looking, well, if he did, then why aren't all those women coming forward and accusing him of that?
Well, don't say that too loudly, because who knows what Hillary has in her bag of junk.
Oh, yeah. So true.
What is your feeling about what would happen to our country if Hillary does become president?
Oh, I think she'll destroy it. She's a liar. It's just like Obama. If she opens her mouth, you can't believe anything she says. It's a lie.
That's what troubles
And
me.
I think it's interesting. Yeah, and I think it's interesting. You get people who are for Hillary, and they'll come up with all their reasons and all the proof that that she's done is wrong, if it didn't happen. And then they laugh at you and treat you like you're some dummy that just looked for something on Google. So where do they find their information? They never let you know where they find their information.
CNN.
And like, it was Steve. Was Steve on there before? Was his name Steve? I can't remember who you're just talking to. Anyway, have him go on YouTube, and I know he'll probably laugh because it's YouTube, because I had a friend that did the same thing. Like I said, where do they get their information? Go on YouTube and listen to the Clinton Chronicles by the Clinton Chronicles. Have you ever watched that?
I haven't.
No?
I have not.
Really an eye-opener on the Clintons.
Well,
too many times there's two coincidences where he and Hillary have been involved in people's murder. No, they didn't do it themselves, but they were behind it.
I have talked on numerous occasions about what I have referred to as the trail of bodies that seem to follow them around. But as you say, there's no proof that they have any direct connection. But it strains. Yeah, coincidence only goes so far. I frankly don't believe in coincidence.
Yeah. Well, I was going to tell you, I have a good Christian friend that she said Obama's not running for Pope.
That's true. And I am concerned about our local leaders that have walked away from this man for something he said 11 years ago. Obviously, they don't believe in the principle of repentance.
I agree.
Don't forget.
Does that mean does that?
Yeah, and I do want to remind you there is a rally on the steps of the state capitol this Friday from 4 till 6 p.m. And that's on the front steps of the Utah Capitol. You can meet and greet both Rocky Giordani and Farley Anderson. They're the Independent American Party presidential and vice presidential candidates. And everybody is invited to bring their Bibles and their guns to show President Obama that Utah conservatives do love both their Bibles and their guns. And candidates' websites are, for Rocky Giordani is rockyforamerica.org and peopleprimary.com is Farley Anderson's. I hope you will be there. I constantly mispronounce Rocky Giordani's last name, and I apologize for that. Okay, let's take our next caller, please. The 801 area, prefix 577. Welcome.
Thanks, Mills.
And your first name?
Bill.
Welcome, Bill.
On that note of our local politicians jumping ship, I'm kind of thinking that statement, that 11-year-old statement by Trump, is kind of doing conservatives a favor. I think it's kind of exposing something here. Now, are our local leaders that shallow-minded, given the state of what Hillary is going to do, to just jump ship over something he said? Because they're fully aware of what Clinton's been doing.
Well, they're turning
I
it
think
into
it's interesting that they get that kind of reaction.
Yeah, and they're
from
turning
a
it
fellow
into a
Republican.
suicide pact, really.
Right. Why would they have that kind of reaction with their fellow Republican and not be as outraged if not more, over what a Democrat presidential nominee is saying, or has done, I should say, more than saying, but has done.
That's a great question, and it's deeply troubling.
Now, as I think about it, I think it comes down to two things. Are they that shallow-minded, or are they exposing some of their political leanings?
I wondered a little bit in that direction as well. Look, part of this, I think, goes back to the fact that the state of Utah overwhelmingly supported Cruz. I personally wanted Cruz to be my candidate. I thought that Cruz was by far the most prepared, the most presidential, et cetera, et cetera. Then when,
I was on that wagon myself.
And when Cruz refused to endorse Trump at first, I backed away from Cruz because, and I sent him a letter to the effect that if you can't keep your word, you're just another politician. And I was very pleased to see him finally come around and endorse Trump.
As was I. Better late than never.
Yeah. And no, Trump is far from my first choice. But if it comes down to Hillary or Trump, that's no choice. Hillary will destroy our country. We are toast if she becomes president.
I completely agree, and I think it exposes. I mean, how could you not see the political picture at this point? How tenuous the situation is, and to just flippantly drop their names from supporting the only possible person that could stop this seems absolutely preposterous. I'm severely disappointed in these people, to say the least.
No question. Hey, appreciate your call. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. I'm Bill.
Hey, that's okay.
Thanks, Bill.
I answer to hey you. That's fine. Appreciate your
never
call.
Late for dinner for me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. We'll be right back with another caller right after this brief message. Omni Hypnosis Training Center has long been known as the leader in hypnosis certification training. They offer the most complete and organized course in hypnosis available anywhere. And this extensive course includes lecture, demonstration, experimentation, audio-visual aids, hands-on practice, plus extensive question and answer sessions. And this extensive training session is from September 29th through October 5th at Energy Development at 215 South Mountainland Drive, Orem, Utah. Now, for a limited time, you can achieve certification and save $100 in the process. Now, there are only a few openings left. To be included, call Kayla Tomlinson, 801-259-7024. Kayla will get you registered and make sure you receive the $100 savings. But hurry, because these openings are very limited. Call Kayla at 801-259-7024. That's 801-259-7024. Welcome back. You're listening to Drive Time Live, the Mills Crenshaw Show on talkradio1.us. And we have a caller again in the 801 area. The prefix is 879. And we're bringing that caller up now. Caller, your first name. Let's try again. Let's see. Grab it by the microphone and see if that makes a difference. Try it. No, you have to grab it. You have to click it.
I am.
Okay. We're having difficulty. I apologize. The caller 801-879. I won't give your last two numbers, but the next two numbers are 78. You've been waiting quite a while. Please try by calling right back. We're having difficulty. I don't know whether it's the equipment or whether you have rung off, but I would like very much to chat with you. So please call right back, and you should be able to do it again just by dialing 701-801-0829, and then when you hear the show on your phone, dial 5, and we'll pick up your call immediately. Some strange things have been happening in Italy. Whole wave of trouble for retirees is sweeping over Italy. I'll come back to that story. Caller in the 801 area, your prefix is 879. Welcome. Hello? Oh. What's going on here? There we go. Okay, caller, again, your first name?
Diana.
Diane, welcome.
I already talked to you. I don't know what happened.
Well, you dialed back automatically. That's what happened. That's fine. Anything you want to add to what you said before?
Well, I'm going to be on, I'm supposed to be Rocky's person that nudges him when he starts yelling. Remember I called in a while ago?
Uh-huh.
Last week?
Yes.
Is he gonna be on the air before Friday?
He will be on the air tomorrow.
Okay, well,
He got in after midnight last night, and he didn't want to be dingy while he was on the air. But we've been in the process of trying to get him interviews on all the local radio stations and TV stations. So you're going to be seeing a lot of Rocky and his running mate this week.
Good.
Yeah, I think it's very important, particularly for those people who think that they can not in good conscience vote for the Republican candidate. Again, I do not understand that because he has apologized for what he himself has basically ruled as crude, rude, and obnoxious language 11 years ago. And
Yeah.
if repentance means anything, I would think that people ought to be willing to accept an apology after 11 years. What do you think?
I agree. But sometimes that's hard for people.
Well, when we have Rocky on tomorrow, I hope you'll call.
I will.
I'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, again, now if you're listening on a computer, grab a phone and dial 701-801-0829. 701-801-0829. I want to chat with you. Then when you hear the program on your phone, then dial 5. And that'll bring you up, and we'll see you immediately. And I appreciate all of you who've called. Now, if you have a landline, if it's plugged into your wall, then you're going to need to dial 1 first. Otherwise, if it's a cell phone of any kind, a smartphone, you don't have to dial 1. That's our nation code, by the way. And the rest of the numbers, 701-801-0829. 701-801-0829. Here's the problem with Italy. There's an ornate building in Rome which houses the world's oldest bank, 544-year-old business, and it's in deep trouble. There's a nasty contagion throughout the Italy banking system. It's so bad that a lot of Italian citizens have already suffered a deep loss in spending money. But that's where this gets interesting, because the beleaguered Italian voters are going to decide in December 4th if they want any more of this. Here's our problem. If they say no, we don't want more of this, then all hell could break loose in the stock markets and the currency markets. The last time there was a no vote, the Dow dropped 3.6% in a day, and $800 billion vanished from the U.S. stock market. So, if you've got any money in the stock market, you might want to get it out certainly before December. And there's only 4 more days before there's supposed to be another shock hitting the market, because the next down day is predicted for the 14th of this month. Word to the wise. By the way, the information I got on Italy is based on Justin Spittler's editorial from the Daily Dispatch. I always try and give sources whenever I can. Oh, and there was a new WikiLeaks email dump released today, and it talks about some of Hillary campaign insiders who are petrified that Bill Clinton's sordid sexual past could actually damage Hillary's chances. The revelation is of particular note because it dovetails with what Donald Trump did, holding a press conference yesterday just before the debate. And 3 of Bill Clinton's sexual abuse victims were there. And Hillary's own abuse victim, the 12-year-old girl who was raped, and Hillary got her rapist off and laughed and bragged about it. The email was marked confidential. It was sent to Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta by Brent Brodowski. He's a left-wing journalist. And details of Brodowski's exchange with someone in the media who told him there are people close to the Clintons who say that William Jefferson Clinton's sex life might end up damaging her. And although Brodowski stresses his view that the more Bill Clinton, the better for Hillary, he adds that there were people very close to the Clintons who are pushing the line that the less Bill Clinton, the better. Now, while this is going on, China has some real problems, and they're very similar to U.S. problems. That is, the debt situation has gotten to epidemic proportions, and the smart money is saying either China has to wean itself off of debt addiction if it's going to avoid any financial calamity, or they're in serious trouble. And that warning comes from the chief of the International Monetary Fund. China, as you are well aware, is increasingly consumer-based, and they are on the edge of financial calamity, and they've got to wean themselves off of this debt addiction. We're a fine nation to talk about that because our nation is so far in debt that it's criminal. Marcus Rodler, Deputy Director of the International Monetary Fund's Asia Pacific Department, has warned that the world's second largest economy was approaching a tipping point. Its very rapidly growing financial section, and it's in the shadow of credit that could undermine the state's ability to contain the fallout from a crash. And that crash has been repeatedly predicted by some of the top people in the market. The level of financial and corporate debt and the complexity of the financial system and rapid growth in shadow banking's on the edge of an unsustainable path, according to the International Monetary Fund. When I'm asked what's the best precious metal to buy, my answer is always the same. Ask yourself, how do I get change? Predictions are that when the collapse of paper money comes, a 1 ounce silver round may jump in value to $500 or $600. Gold's going to be much higher. Well, how do you get change? As the national marketing rep for Phoenix Certified Mint, I recommend that you get the smallest units possible. Just call 801-706-2256. That's 801-706-2256. Leave your name and phone number twice and the best time to call. I'll get back to you. Or you can call tonight after 7 p.m. or before 3:30 tomorrow. Now, remember, nobody knows for sure when the collapse will happen, but more and more financial wizards are pointing toward the 1st of October or the election. So don't hesitate to call me. I'll answer any questions you've got. No obligation, of course. Call 801-706-2256. That's 801-706-2256. We're back. Thank you for being there. You are listening to Drive Time Live, the Mills Crenshaw Show on talkradio1.us. Now, we're working on a number of things as I speak. We are talking with other great talents who will join us very soon. Our new website will be up shortly. In fact, the webmasters are going to be here in the studio tomorrow when Rocky is here, and we'll let you know what some of the new developments will be. I do want to inform you that we're adding a new show, and it will be on Mondays. It's called Military Monday. And it will start officially next week. But I want to encourage any of you who happen to be listening who are former military individuals to call in and share your experiences. I think those are going to be critical. Now, I've got a number of stories that I find fascinating, and I'm going to share a couple with you as a prelude to Military Monday. We have a lot of listeners who are either in the military or are former military members, and their web sites are closely akin to ours. And there are a whole bunch of stories that come from actual exploits. Now, there are some stories, of course, that you've seen in the movies. I knew Audie Murphy, for example, and his story to hell and back has been well documented. It was severely downplayed. You may not think this of a Hollywood star, and that's what Audie became, but when Audie Murphy was on screen, he tried to downplay his role in the Second World War. He was a very quiet kid. And what most people were unaware, the Marines turned him down, the Navy turned him down, and he had a hard time even getting the Army to accept him, and he turned out to be World War II's most decorated hero. But he was such a scrawny young kid, the military didn't even want him. But there are some stories from Second World War that should have been made into movies and haven't been. For example, the Night Witches. Night Witches were made up only of women. The 588th 9th Bomber Regiment was trained for bombing missions behind Germany lines, and they were flying 1920 era's planes built of wood and canvas with no radio or radar. Their bombs were tied to the wings by wire, and this construction gave them the advantage of flying below radar and surprising the enemy in the dead of night. But can you imagine that? They would fly anywhere from 15 to 18 missions per night, each one. And their planes often returned absolutely riddled with bullets. Now, Nadia Popova enlisted when she was 19, and her motive was revenge for her brother who was killed in the front, and her home was taken over by German soldiers. Her town was destroyed by German aircraft. She was shot down in the northern Caucasus in July of 1942. She met another shot-down pilot who would become her husband when the war was over. Lieutenant Colonel Popova flew 852 missions. My gosh, 852 missions in aircraft made of wood? Come on, our bomber pilots, if they flew 25 missions, they were sent home. She was lucky. She watched a bunch of her friends get shot down, burning planes falling from the sky, and the regiment, unofficially known as Stalin's Falcons, were given a much more chilling moniker by the Germans. They called them Netschsicken. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. Any of you who speak Deutsch. Translated, it was the Night Witches. What a great name for a thriller. Can you imagine? The only reason I would think is that these were Soviet bomber pilots. Then there's the story of Hans Scharff, the gentle interrogator. He wasn't really meant to be part of the German army. He lived in South Africa for his family, but he was drafted when visiting Germany when the war broke out, and his wife convinced a general to put him with the interpreters instead of the front lines. But through a series of mistakes and coincidence, he became the lead interrogator for the Allied pilots that fell in France and Germany. And having seen a prisoner abused when he was an assistant, he vowed against the same treatment. Instead, his technique was quite unique. He used kindness, friendly conversation to extract information, and his success in using kindness to get what he wanted has been recently studied and compared to other interrogation techniques, and it's been found that not only does one tend to get more information and more accurate information from the prisoner, prisoners usually unaware of how much information they've actually given. Just imagine a movie built on that approach rather than the beatings and the violent techniques. After the war, Scharff divorced, moved to the United States, married an American, and found success in a new career as a mosaic artist. And one of his works actually appears in the Magic Kingdom castle at Disney World. Stranger than fiction. Then there's the Major Charity Adams versus the Buzz Bomb. The American 88th Central Postal Directory Battalion was the only all-female, all-black Army Corps overseas in the Second World War. And their journey started with a bang. A buzz bomb was their welcoming committee on arrival in London. That was in February of 45. The battalion was especially loyal to their leader, Major Charity Adams. A visiting American general was displeased upon inspection that the major's whole unit was not present and threatened to replace her with a white lieutenant. Her answer was, "Over my dead body," and her battalion agreed. If he intended to court-martial her, he'd have to court-martial all of them. And he immediately apologized. Their work wasn't finished after the war. They were sent to Rouen, France, to move letters around continental Europe. And the welcome they received in Europe was in sharp contrast to their treatment back home. The French people applauded, and they were paraded through Paris. They received American soldiers, greeted them on their arrival, and helped them unload, unpack, even made their beds for them, leaving cards with their names and units on the pillows. Now, unfortunately, no movies yet, but great story, and it is one that needs to be told. And then there's the Ghost Army. 23rd Headquarters, Special Troop Soldiers Unit known as the Ghost Army. They used fakery, misinformation to deceive the enemy throughout the entire European theater, full of artists, illustrators, radio and sound guys plucked from New York and the Philadelphia art schools in January. And the 1,100-man unit pretended to be much larger, and they used 500-pound speakers that could be heard for a 15-mile radius. They would send fake radio transmissions to distract from actual missions, and they had blow-up tanks and fake observation planes to round out their schemes, and they marked their tanks with chalk and sewed fake patches to pretend to be other units and hide from enemy spies. They were prevented from talking about their experiences. That was, of course, before the reports became declassified. And the majority of the American Army were totally unaware of their existence until the former soldier and illustrator Arthur Shillstone wrote about it in 1985. The PBS broadcast then a documentary on the group in 2013. And I would think that it makes a great plot for a movie. Now, I talked earlier about the gentle interrogator. Well, there was Vera Atkins, the ruthless interrogator. She placed 400 agents out in the field, training them for months, teaching them the ropes, accounting for every detail of their new identity. So when the war ended in 45, over 100 agents were unaccounted for. She made it her personal mission to solve the stories of these missing women herself, and she muscled her way into officially joining the British War Crimes Commission. She was known for her ruthless interrogation skills. And in one report, she said that the commandant of Auschwitz admitted to his horrible crimes before lunch. Atkins was part of several such interrogations, but she also used the information to forward her search for the spies. carved names on jail cell walls, sketches from a former Vogue sketch artist who survived multiple concentration camps, and intercepted letters. They were all recorded and used as part of her investigation. And when she returned to the U.S., she focused on publicizing and memorializing her forgotten agents. So much so that she appeared briefly in some movies made of their lives. But Atkins was a very secret individual. No movie has yet been made about her incredible tendency and her loyalty to those agents. I don't know. Now, I could certainly vote for a woman like that. But Hillary? Thank you, no. Now, if you happen to be ex-military or if you're currently in the military, we want you to participate on Mondays when we have Military Monday. We'd like you to be part of that. I've got some more, but that's enough for right now. I want to hear from you. And if you're listening online, you need to pick up a phone and dial 1-701. Now, you only dial 1 if it's a hard line. If it's a cell phone or a smartphone, you don't have to dial 1. The rest of the number is 701-801-0829. 701-801-0829. I want to hear from you concerning last night's debate. Your response. Those responses are spontaneous, they're yours, and that helps us gauge where we stand as a nation. Frankly, I'm worried. I'm concerned at this point that Hillary will become our president. And if you think that's peachy keen, if you're a hardcore Democrat and you've been thinking that you want to win because it's your party, I want you to keep this in mind. Hillary, in my personal opinion, will actually totally destroy the United States. Oh, it won't start out that way. There'll be parties and everybody will be singing Happy Days Are Here Again, and everybody's going to be toasting each other and thinking it's peachy keen, and then it will start. What am I talking about? Well, here's an example. Monday, Hillary Clinton encouraged her supporters to follow and stage an intervention for a protester who was thrown out by her security after he interrupted her rally in Detroit. You know, she said, after the demonstrator was forcibly removed from her campaign event, quote, "I do hope somebody follows that gentleman out and stages an intervention. His crime? He was an African-American man wearing a shirt with a picture of Bill Clinton and the word rape written across the front." Continuing Clinton's quote, "He clearly has not been following this election very closely," Clinton said, "but she wanted him stopped and an intervention scheduled." Now, this is the latest in the incident in a series of protests involving demonstrators interrupting Clinton and her surrogates to accuse the 42nd president of being a sexual predator. And the women were there last night. Vice presidential candidate Tim Kaine, Democrat of Virginia, was heckled. And the protest, at that time, the protester shouted, "Bill Clinton's a rapist." And that demonstrator, who was a white man, also wore a shirt with the likeness of the former president and the word rape printed across the front. "Bill Clinton is a rapist," the man shouted repeatedly as he showed off his shirt to the cameras, and Kaine traveling press corps. Okay, all part of the game, I guess. And you understand being heckled, but it's not a fair contest. CNN, for example, would accidentally broadcast itself coaching a member of a focus group, telling him what to say following Sunday night's presidential debate. Now, of course, the network denies that, but it was on camera. I've seen it. And a video unloaded to YouTube after Sunday's debate shows CNN discussing the debates event with the focus group of undecided Ohio voters, only to have a live microphone reveal much more than they intended. The clip begins, CNN is showing a moment from the debate in which Democrat nominee Hillary Clinton says that America already is great, but we're great because we're good. Then, as CNN cuts back to its focus group, CNN reporter Pamela Brown can be heard speaking to a group participant in a hushed tone, telling that participant what to say. As I said, it's not a fair contest. And it was interesting, I would cut back and forth last night between CNN and Fox, and it was as though I were watching two entirely separate debates. Fox at least tried to pretend to be fair and impartial. I'm not sure they were, but CNN didn't even pretend. Fox also had a focus group, but they were not coached, and the majority of them supported Trump afterwards. A much higher percentage than ended up on CNN. As I say, it was like two separate debates. Look, I mentioned that next week we will begin Military Monday. I'll come back to that story. We have a caller in the 928 area, prefix 228. Caller, your first name.
This is Chet.
Welcome, Chet.
Say, I get a little frustrated, a lot of these Trump supporters. I certainly have them among family and friends. The one thing that seems to me, though, to be a blind eye to everybody who wants to support this man, because that's the only ticket they have to keeping Hillary out, is that they insist that, that we overlook the things that he has done throughout the campaign. It has nothing to do with this video or this audio thing that came out over the weekend, really. It has everything to do with what this man's done the whole time he's been running. And I have to ask a question, and that is, where were these people when Bill Clinton did what he did? And everybody said character doesn't matter. If you're going to say, because you disagree with Bill Clinton, that character matters there, and yet you turn right around and say character does not matter because Donald Trump is going to beat Hillary, I question your sincerity. I don't understand how people can overlook everything in total this man has said for the last year, and say it doesn't matter because he's the only one that can beat Hillary. Now, what are your comments on that?
Well, I think that you've raised an excellent question, and character does matter. It did matter then, and it does matter now. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You're absolutely right. What you're overlooking, in my opinion, is Hillary's lack of character. Bill Clinton can't hurt us. Unless Hillary is elected, he can't get back in the White House. Correct?
Oh, that's very correct.
Okay. So Bill Clinton can't hurt us. His evil deeds were done much earlier, and his damage to the women was then, not now. My concern has nothing to do with Bill, but everything to do with his spouse. It is my personal opinion that based on her own pronouncements, she will utterly destroy the United States of America. She will take away from us our Second Amendment, our First and Third Amendments, and the 10th Amendment, in my opinion, is under siege at this moment from Hillary based on her own statements. And I think the United States will end up in chaos as a result of her election. But it has nothing to do with the integrity of her husband. It has to do with the fact that she attacked the women that her husband attacked. She tried to destroy them, and I consider that as bad or worse than the rape itself. What are your thoughts?
I totally agree, but I'm with you in a way. It's not about Bill. I'm just pointing out that that's what people said. That's what the Democrats said. Oh, character doesn't matter, and now they want character to matter. It is all about Hillary, but the principle is what I'm talking about. How can we justify saying what we did about Bill or today about Hillary, and yet overlook everything that Trump has done up until now?
Okay, and that's a fair question. That is a very fair question. But what has Trump done up until now?
He hasn't actually done anything. He's talked in the sewer. And he has led a life that, well, let's just say hasn't been exemplary. You know, going through 3 marriages, all of them with beautiful women, and he looks at, you know, he's talked in a very salacious manner about his own daughter in the past, and you have to sit there and say, yeah, this is all words, but do words matter? I think they do. I think words do matter. It's like a prominent LDS writer once said. He says, sticks and stones do break bones. The fact is, that's what they do better than anything else. You know, if we don't have the character to stand up and say, look, this is wrong, it doesn't matter whether you just talk about it or whether you actually do it. Yeah, Clintons are a crime family, in my opinion, and they're pretty bad ones. But at the same time, are we going to justify one evil to combat another? I don't see that. I can't go there.
Well, let me offer a suggestion. Let me offer a suggestion to you. I agree with the often quoted principle that the lesser of two evils is still evil. However, right now we are talking about the survival of our country. We're not talking about a football game or a card game. We're talking about the actual physical survival of our country. And the destruction of the laws of our country. the supreme law of the land is the Constitution of the United States. And Hillary is attacking that Constitution directly. And she has demonstrated that she thinks that she is above the law. And to me, that is a clear and present danger, not just uncomfortable, not just a bad guy or a bad gal. We're talking about incipient evil, in my personal opinion. Now, if Bill Clinton had not last night said openly and publicly that what he had said 11 years ago was crude, rude, and obnoxious, that he was embarrassed by it, that he apologized for what he had said, that it was wrong, but it was only words, locker room talk, and not actions, I would have had a hard time voting for him myself. However, there is something he wrote that troubles me far more deeply, and it's something that he included in one of his books when he apparently bragged about bedding other men's wives. Now, I don't know if that was braggadocio or if he actually did it, but that is something that he is answerable for, in my personal opinion. But that's just me. I have no right or desire to impose my set of standards on any other person. But that did trouble me. It troubled me deeply. But when I look at Clinton and compare her to him, I see him as a flawed human being. I see her as a clear and present danger who will destroy our country. Or am I wrong?
So, in your line of thinking, Congress is impotent.
Yes.
Congress cannot stop Hillary.
That
Congress
is correct.
And the Supreme Court cannot do anything to ameliorate.
Well, she's going to replace the court. That's the whole point. She will bring down our country.
She still has to go through Congress, though, doesn't she?
When was one time in the entire 7 years of his reign, 7+ years of his reign, only one time has Congress vetoed anything that Obama has done. One time. Let alone attack him or impeach him. And surely there were grounds for impeachment.
There is grounds for impeachment, and that's why the Senate and our Congress should be our highest priority, unless you think that the president is the sole leader of our country. The president is not the sole leader of our country. Congress is supposed to be the sole leader of our country.
Yeah.
And if we elected good people there, I don't think it matters what a president
What have they
does.
done in the last 7 years? What has our Congress done? Right now, the public's opinion of Congress is below that of a cockroach. Were you aware of that? Cockroaches were liked by a higher percentage of the public than Congress.
Doesn't surprise me. But it goes back to the fact that we need to focus not on a single leader, which is our president. We shouldn't be focused on that. We should be focused on who represents us in Congress, because they're the only way to put a kibosh on anything that the president does. I don't know why this Congress is so weak-kneed.
I don't either.
That's why we need...
It's a disgrace.
It is, and we need to elect good people like Mike Lee and Jason Chaffetz to Congress, so that when these things happen, we can say, "Hey, look, we don't approve of this," and they will say, "Yes, we don't approve of it either," and they will vote against it. but everybody is focused on a president. And as the country was designed, the president was the weakest of the three. And yet we're slowly making him the most strong of the three.
Tomorrow, I'm going to have a presidential candidate on the air. His name is Rocky Giordani. He will be here in studio tomorrow. And on Friday, he will appear on the steps of the state capitol at an open rally, and you personally are invited to attend, and you may find somebody that you can vote for.
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to still stay with Darrell Castle. I've heard Rocky, and quite frankly, I want somebody a little less flamboyant than Rocky. I'm sure he's got a lot of good ideas, but I want somebody a little more level-headed. So I'm going to stick with Darrell Castle and Scott Bradley. But, that's fine. That's not my issue. My issue is that no one person can be the savior or destroyer of this nation. And yet that's what most of the people who support Trump seem to believe in. He's the only one that could save us. And quite frankly,
let me explain why they feel that way. They, too, see Hillary Clinton as a clear and present danger. They listen to what she says, they see what she has done, and they recognize that if she becomes president, that she will destroy our country, and our children and our great-grandchildren will no longer have this land of liberty. It will cease to exist. Where else can you run in this world? Where can you go? And knowing that, they know that a vote for anybody but Trump will hand over the country to Clinton and her ilk, and our country will end up being destroyed. And there won't be a thing Clinton can do about it. Correction, there won't be a thing that Congress can do about it, because Hillary will continue this war against the Constitution. She will support judges who will change the Constitution. They shouldn't be able to do that, but they will. And as a result, we'll no longer be a free nation.
That's why we need somebody besides Senator Hatch in the judiciary. But you try to tell people that Senator Hatch is a man who doesn't really care, apparently, about our Constitution. He says he does.
He used to.
I haven't seen any example of it.
At one point he did. Unfortunately, you're right to the extent he no longer is the champion of freedom that he once was.
And what we need is to have people say, hey, we want somebody different. I understand the senator has talked about not running again. I hope he means it this time. He needs to. He's getting old. He needs to retire. We don't need him anymore. We need fresh blood. We need more people like Mike Lee in there.
Agreed.
And yet, too many people say, well, I don't like Mike Lee because of this, that, or the other. And that, I find that absolutely ridiculous. But that's where we are. If we would focus, instead of focusing on one leader, we focused on where the power really is supposed to be, we wouldn't have to worry about Hillary Clinton because we'd have an oversight committee.
Okay, but Hillary is a cruel reality.
She is, but she can only do what the Congress allows her.
Well, okay.
And that is the problem.
But even if we replace Senator Hatch with another Mike Lee, that's not going to stem the tide. That won't be enough to overcome what one liberal president will do. I shouldn't say liberal. They are really progressive.
Exactly. I don't know. I shake my head. You know, we're willing to overlook anything in order to oppose someone that we rightfully disagree with. But I'm saying morality is not something that exists in a vacuum. Morality is something that exists where you have good, courageous, moral people. And if we don't have courageous, moral people, because we've got to oppose somebody that's going to, one person, you're sure giving her and Trump and everybody else running for president a whole lot of power to be able to say, okay, you're the only one that can save us. And totally ignoring how the system was supposed to work. And I realize you're not going to agree with me, but that is where I'm at. We're so far gone as a nation that we're willing to overlook almost anything in order to get our one champion that is supposed to represent all of us as the guy that's going to quote unquote save us. And that's looking for a savior in the wrong place. And it's also ignoring how the system is supposed to work. But this is the way it is. This is the way this society has gravitated. We can only have one person save us. And that's not the way the founders initially created it. And that is a tragedy.
Good comments. I appreciate your views, and I appreciate your call very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good call, good comments. I welcome all of your calls and all of your comments. All you have to do if you're listening on a phone is dial 5. Couldn't be easier. Now, if you're listening on a computer, you'll need to grab a phone. If it's wired to your wall, if it's a hard line, you will need to dial 1 first. If it's a cell phone or a smartphone or any portable unit like that, you do not have to dial 1. You simply dial the rest of the number, which is 701 801 0829. Again, 701 801 0829. And when you've dialed that number and you hear the show on your phone, at that point, dial 5. And that'll bring you up on our computer. We have a call coming in, and we'll bring up that call. It's 801 area, prefix is 364. Welcome, caller. Your first name?
Ray.
Welcome, Ray.
You know, I was listening to that last night, and you know, they have something called a Dean Martin roast where they're all picking on him. And it's a comedy, but this is like a roast without the comedy. I think...
Tain't funny, McGee.
The questioners, or moderators, as you might call them, I think they were all slanted to throw attacks in the form of questions to impugn his credibility, and it seemed like the whole theme of the thing was, how can we steer this to reflect on you, Mr. Trump, and Mr. Trump's idea was, how do I re-steer it and re-steer the questions and intercede to make points of my own that I couldn't make otherwise, unless I interrupted, unless I took this extra time here or there to make other relevant things other than just what the moderators wanted.
It was clearly a stacked deck. What else did you?
I was just going to say that I'm trying to think. Was it Cruz that in the first debates when they were running to see who'd become the candidate? He was throwing up the idea that the whole thing of the debates wasn't even relevant. The questions that the media was throwing wasn't even relevant, and he was right. I mean, the questions that they had were just crazy, things that didn't have to do with running the country or anything. And well, maybe this thing about honor and dignity. Maybe it does have something to do with running the country, but you can't really say there's one pure candidate out there that's, so you don't have that choice. Why talk about that? You don't have that choice. If you had that choice, you could do it. You could put Jesus up there, that's fine, but you can't. You got people that are flawed and they got these things. The problem is who's the worst. And I think it's Hillary by far. I'm in agreement with you. But there's something that troubles me, and that is I'm reading the headlines in the newspaper today, and they're doing pretty much what the moderators on the TV were doing. They're focusing more on Trump's picadillos, or not even picadillos because they haven't proven anything, but more of his braggadocio. But the other article says Utah's Lee says Trump can't win White House and must step aside. And that kind of troubled me. What do you think about that?
I think it's suicidal. We're dealing with imperfect people, as you have clearly pointed out. And we know that we have two very imperfect candidates. But we do know that one of those two candidates will destroy our country, and the other one at least bears a verbal support for the laws of this country. And the other candidate is a scofflaw. She thinks she's above the law. I mean, the choice could not be clearer. And yet, people will simply say, because it's my team or my party, I'm going to vote this way, and we're going to win, hooray. And their grandchildren are going to pay a terrible price for that, in my opinion.
Well, I'm troubled because I don't see any other alternative but Trump. It's not a question of whether he's going to be good for the country. It's who's going to be worst in this case. That's just the way it is. That's just what we're choosing. We're not having any other choices. And so because of that, I'm saying, well, you ought to stand by this person. If he's a Republican, you ought to stand, as a Republican, you ought to stand by him. But then I get this second thing about now the church is coming out and talking against Trump, the LDS Church. And so I'm looking at it and I'm saying,
are the members of the First Presidency speaking out, or are people who pretend to be speaking for the church saying things that are not authorized? I don't know.
Well, I think it was. They said it was one of the 70, that had to be sponsored to say it. But I can't swear to that. I won't swear to that. That's just kind of like I'm not listening closely enough.
Well,
But
there are a lot of people out there that I really respect. I respect Mike Lee very, very highly. However,
well, so do I, because he represents the Constitution more than anybody else.
exactly.
And so I'm really torn on this thing, because someone who's like that, and who I respect probably more than anybody else in Congress there, is speaking against Trump. But Trump's the only chance, and I feel really frustrated because, I don't know.
And look, even if he were 100% correct, there is no way that another candidate could step in and win the election. They can't even be on the ballot.
Well, it's a job you really wouldn't want to have, because whoever gets presidency has to inherit the debt.
And the collapse of the country.
Is anybody able except maybe Jesus Christ to pull us out of that debt?
I don't think so. I think whoever is elected will be presiding over the collapse of the United States. We've known each other long enough that you clearly understand the information that I've received, and we are on the ragged edge of an economic collapse that will probably be worse than the Great Depression and probably last longer than the Great Depression. And whoever is in power will get blamed for it.
He'll be like Herbert Hoover. He'll be blamed for the Depression or whatever. Isn't he the guy that was blamed for that, or
yes.
brought it into it?
Yeah. And he said to Roosevelt, correction. Roosevelt said to him, Mr. President, I will be given credit for many of the things that you started. And it was true. It should have been, I will be given the blame, because the socialist programs that Herbert Hoover started and that FDR continued, according to Morgenthau, who was the treasurer under FDR, Morgenthau said that these socialist programs actually prolonged the Depression. They didn't help it.
Yeah, I can't see the. It will be a thankless job, other than I think Hillary will do just like what Craig Hewlett said he was going to do. She's just going to be a mouthpiece for the international globalists.
Yes.
And so she'll just lead us down to hell, is all she'll do. I mean, at least Trump might, put on the brakes a little bit, and slow it down. Because after all, I think he's a little more independent. I think he's kind of feisty and just wants to go against, with doing anything that everybody else wants to do. You know what I mean? He's his own boss, in other words. And in the fact that he's his own boss, even if he's not perfect, he's not. I don't think he wants to be pushed around by a bunch of globalists, and that in itself is, I guess, part of the big point.
That's why they're trying so hard to stop him.
Another thing I want to speak to is this guy who was talking about these different deeds that people do, and control. Who has control of Congress is not just one man. Maybe he might research into the what some people are saying, that we are still in a state of emergency, and in a state of emergency that was never completely rescinded. The President of the United States, we are right now under martial law. in which case the Congress does not really have any power. Now, I would like to have asked something of Cook, because Cook would have been one that was the Representative Cook, because they say that every so many years they reinstate the emergency status that was started in the war, and as long as that emergency status holds, the actual power is in the hands of the president in the state of emergency, in which case the senators and representatives wouldn't have any power. They're actually abnegating their power. I don't know who can speak to that, but it's all really tangled up. I don't know how to, completely.
Well, there is one clear and present danger, in my personal opinion, and that's Hillary Clinton. She will destroy this country. I don't think there is a question.
Neither do I.
And the tragedy is the sheeple out there buy anything she says, because it's echoed by Hollywood personalities or television personalities, and those people don't have the sense to come in out of the rain.
Well, most of that is funded through liberal things, aren't they? I mean, they're kind of run by everything that's liberal. I mean, there's a few people like Charlton Heston and I don't know who else,
They're a handful, yeah.
Apparently, Clint Eastwood, Cliff Robertson, I think, was one that was bucking the Hollywood trend, but I think most of them, were kind of.
By the way, Clint Eastwood's son appears to have real star quality.
Oh, good.
I hope he learned some political savvy from his dad.
Yep.
Am I going to see you
that's all
tonight?
I had to say. We go on.
No, I was just asking if you were going to be there tonight.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
I'd never missed your class even once.
Well, for the audience's benefit, this gentleman, Ray, is one of the 2 advanced students that are getting ready for their black belt that I've been working with for these many months. And I will look forward to seeing you tonight.
I will see you there, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
See how easy that is? All you have to do is dial 5. If you are listening on your phone, all you have to do is dial 5. And I really want to hear your opinion. If you did not see the debate last night, you still are going to have some opinion about what's going on in this crazy world of ours. And whether you like it or not, you are going to live or die by the outcome of this upcoming election. And the sad part of it is there are a lot of people who have been brought up on this something for nothing philosophy. They think they have a right to take from you anything you produce. And Hillary Clinton has already admitted that she is going to raise taxes. Now, she claims she's only going to raise taxes on the rich. That's absolute nonsense. Let me demonstrate why. Already, the wealthiest among us, the richest 1%, 1% of our population pay 90% of the taxes. That is a cold, hard reality. And yet the progressives say, well, they're not paying their fair share. We're going to demand more. Oh, no, they're not. Because the wealthy can afford tax experts to get them out of those high tax brackets. Can you? Can you afford a super tax expert? I doubt it. I certainly can't. None of the people I know can. Not only that, but if the top 1% are already paying 90% of the taxes, what is a fair share? Tell me. If 90% isn't fair, what is? 100%? Nobody's going to stand around and get beat up by the tax man. They will either leave the country and take their money with them, which they have been doing in increasing numbers, or they'll simply stop paying and hide their wealth, or they'll put it in tax-free municipals where it's going to get wasted, but it won't do you any good. This is the thing that progressives never seem to learn. Facts are that entrepreneurs, the middle-class entrepreneur who takes the risks with their money, build the businesses and provide the jobs for everybody out there. And when you take away their incentives and you say, well, we're going to steal whatever you have to pay the free stuff we are demanding. And that's the other thing. Hillary is promising free schools, free everything. Where's she going to get the money? She's going to have to steal it first. Maggie Thatcher said it. The problem with socialism is you eventually run out of other people's money. And the other people don't have to stand around and get beat up. If nothing else, they'll go buy an island, start their own country. Or they'll move someplace where their wealth is appreciated and whatever business they bring with them is glorified instead of punished. You're listening to Drive Time Live, the Mills Crenshaw Show, on talkradio1.us. We'll be right back. Omni Hypnosis Training Center has long been known as the leader in hypnosis certification training. They offer the most complete and organized course in hypnosis available anywhere. And this extensive course includes lecture, demonstration, experimentation, audio-visual aids, hands-on practice, plus extensive question and answer sessions. And this extensive training session is from September 29th through October 5th at Energy Development at 215 South Mountainland Drive, Orem, Utah. Now, for a limited time, you can achieve certification and save $100 in the process. Now, there are only a few openings left. To be included, call Kayla Tomlinson, 801-259-7024. Kayla will get you registered and make sure you receive the $100 savings. But hurry, because these openings are very limited. Call Kayla at 801-259-7024. That's 801-259-7024. Welcome back. You're listening to Drive Time Live, the Mills Crenshaw Show on talkradio1.us, and we're about to enter the last hour of the show for today. Now, as I sit here, I am seated next to a lot of silver. It was just delivered to me by the Mint. And I will be, over the next couple of days, I will be delivering this silver to my clients. And if you are one of those clients who've been waiting for this silver, I just got the delivery and I will deliver it tonight if you want to call me. And my personal number is 801-706-2256. There's another reason for bringing this to mind. It's getting more and more difficult to get precious metals. I've been talking with the Mint, and they have had precious metals when a lot of the coin dealers can't get them. And that's because they buy in large quantities and they have direct access to the smelters. We actually have it. There are some companies that quote low prices, then they can't get the precious metals. We have it. The fact that I'm sitting right next to 5 boxes of silver coins is a testament. And these are big boxes. I'll have to make several trips. I can't carry it all at once, and neither can the people from the Mint. You need to protect yourself. You need to protect your family, because we're only 4 days away from the next financial crisis that we've been warned about. They've been talking about the 14th. That's the next shelter day. And every day now, I'm being bombarded with information from some of the real heavyweights in the market, and they are screaming at this point, get out. Get out of the market if you possibly can, because you're going to get a real haircut. You're going to get hurt if you don't get out. And there are minor fluctuations. Silver was up a little bit today. So the people who are getting these deliveries will actually, it will be worth more than they paid for it. It's been down for several days. So it's still a very advantageous time to buy. If you wait, your paper assets will be worth next to nothing. That's the promise of what's coming. You've still got a little time. We can take your personal check. You'll find that the banks are making it more and more difficult to withdraw cash. If you have cash, that's great. We can take your personal check, but you need to hurry, because the next change that's coming will actually attack your retirement funds. We've been warned that on the 14th, the Securities and Exchange Commission will make a ruling that the only acceptable retirement investment will be in U.S. Treasury bonds and Treasury bills. Can you understand what that means? That means they are going to convert your wealth, your savings, into U.S. debt. Well, some people think, what could be safer than to have that debt owed to you by the government? The government doesn't have anything. The government cannot give you anything it doesn't first take first. And the US dollar is on the edge of collapse worldwide. Now, I've been warning you about these things. I told you that on the 30th of last month, the International Monetary Fund would issue a new basket of currencies, and they did. And they allowed the Chinese renminbi to be included in that basket of currencies, and that is exactly what they did. And the people who predicted that also have predicted there will come very shortly a 60% drop in the stock market, and that too will come, as well as the long-term collapse of the US dollar. That is on its way as well. Don't wait, because I don't control these markets. I wish I could, but I don't. We can still get precious metals for you for a while. But when that's going to stop, I don't know. Right now, we've got it, and I represent the mint. So if you call me, you are dealing directly with the mint. I got a call from out of state earlier in the day from somebody who saw our website. They wanted a price on 1/10 of 1 ounce gold Caesars. Now, there is also a 1 gram Caesar. And the 1 gram Caesar is about 1/3 the cost of a 1/10 of an ounce round. So they're a great buy. But if you wait, you're not going to be able to afford it. Cold, hard reality. And if you're interested, I'll give you my number. We can make arrangements to meet. My number is 801-706-2256. But you are going to need to hurry, because these low prices that are currently available on precious metals are not going to last. Both silver and gold were up slightly today. They have been depressed. I know why. I was told this by the mint. The big banks are once again storing precious metals. And so what they do is they sell short precious metals like gold and silver. They take those profits and they buy up hard metal, and they fill their vaults with the metal, and they continue to sell paper gold and paper silver short. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a sudden demand, and those prices are going to go sky high. Then they'll cover their shorts. I just realized that's almost a double entendre, but they will cover their short positions, and they will have vaults full of precious metals waiting for that to even go higher. And they're going to end up with bloody fortunes on their hands. And the handful of you who convert your paper assets to hard precious metals will have something that has real value to it. And you won't be dependent on anyone else. You will have real independence, because the time will shortly come when the only thing that will have any value will be cold, hard assets. By the way, we tell all of our clients, do not store your goods in a freezer or in the refrigerator. Where do you think the term cold hard cash comes from? That's where it comes from. And thieves know that. But there are some safe places that we know about that you can hide. We do not ever want to know where you actually decide you're going to hide your goods. That's between you and your family. But you should let some family members know, so you don't create a treasure hunt of something ever happen to you. Okay, final hour. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the day, next week on Monday, we're going to begin Military Monday. And I was doing a little research to get ready for that. And earlier I shared some stories that have not been made into movies. And they're great stories. They're true stories. But war isn't fun. War isn't an adventure, and war isn't a movie. It's the cold, hard reality. And I thought I would, in honor of preparation for Military Monday, I thought I would share a story or two with you. Only this time it's not going to be the heroic side of things. It's going to be the cold, blunt truth. For example, there was a little girl that died. A car bomb. What happened was there's an Iraqi police station, and right next to it was a coffee shop. And a lot of the police officers would go there and get coffee in the mornings. And there were just a lot of civilians in that area. And a car bomb just drove up and indiscriminately killed everybody there. Cops and civilians. And those explosions that happened were just so enormous that body parts flew up in 100 meters away. I'm going to leave that story and take a call. I will come back to the story and tell you the rest of it, but we'll go now to the caller in the 801 area, prefix 298. Caller, your first name.
Steve.
Welcome, Steve.
Gee, I was hoping to hear the rest of the story.
Well, I'll be happy to share it.
I can listen to it later, I guess, because I only get one call per day, don't I?
Well, that's up to you. If you want to just stay on and listen to the rest of the story, I can do the story first, and then we can talk, or the other way around.
Yeah, let's hear the rest of the story.
Okay. Well, there were the people who were killed it was indiscriminate. Everyone killed everywhere, cops and civilians, and it just so enormous that body parts can fly up to 100 meters away. And we got to the scene. I'm quoting the author now. We checked it out, and we were trying to secure it. A lot of chaos, a lot of stuff going on at the time, and I was in my truck scanning for my machine gun. I'm scanning for anything that could happen because that's part of the job, just sitting there scanning. And then looking over on the side street, there was a little girl's foot. Well, I think it was a girl because it looked like a little pink sandal, but there was a foot still in it. A little pink sandal with a little flower or something on it, and the shoe was so small, I'm imagining the girl couldn't be any more than 6, and just the foot still in it. Smoldered, burned and smoldering, and just sitting there on the side of the road, the body parts, I don't know. It's not a video game. It's very real. And if you think about it, it was a little girl. She was obviously innocent. No way you could accuse a child that young of being guilty of anything. And her life was snuffed out in just a second, just from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's no way to get emotional about it. Like I said, you just get numb to it. It's just like there's no crying about it. A lot of soldiers joke about it. I look at that little foot and the bastard child that got blown up, but I guarantee that soldier thinks about it a bit more deeply than I don't really know how to explain it, but there's just no other way. Great numbness that creeps over everybody. But it did cross my mind later like, well, it's disgusting. I should be more grossed out. I hope I'm not so messed up in the head. I mean, it's just dealing with death every day. That was written by Jeff Englehart, 3rd Brigade, 1st Infantry Division, February 2004 to 2005 in Diyala Province. And there are more stories like that. This is the cold, hard reality of war. Steve, let's stop at that point and chat about what you wanted to talk about.
Well, I was going to chat about the debate. What I want to talk about is your story a little bit now. I remember one of my favorite shows of all time was MASH, and they were known for having a lot of powerful moments. And I think one of them is this, is when Hawkeye said the difference of the difference between hell and war is a lot worse. Because, except for a few of the brass at the top, the war is full of innocent bystanders. Your comment.
That's a truth. It's a profound truth. Yeah, MASH was one of those anti-war specials. They tried to dress that up in socially acceptable terms, but basically MASH was, the whole intent was to be anti-war. And war is not pleasant. It's not a game. And yeah, the movies make war heroic, but that's one of the reasons that I'm going to include some real life stories from real life warriors, like the one that I just read. Because I don't want to glorify war, but I do want to glorify the men and women who fight those battles, because there's more coming. I think the thing, Steve, that I worry about is if Hillary gets elected, we're going to end up in civil war. And those are the worst. The worst of the worst.
You know, that concerns me too, but I think that could easily happen either way, whether Trump or Hillary gets elected. That's just my opinion, because you know, I've said this a million times, I don't like either of those candidates.
Well, tomorrow you'll get an opportunity to hear from an alternative candidate. And then Friday, on the steps of the state capitol, we're going to have a rally that is being sponsored by the Independent American Party, and it's an invitation to all undecided or conservative-minded voters to bring their Bibles and their guns and demonstrate once and for all that those of us who are conservative, yeah, we do cling to our Bibles and our guns, but we do so out of love of freedom and not out of hatred for anybody else.
Yes, and that is true, because you know, unfortunately, I probably cannot be there on Friday as much as I want to, but I have a family event, and family has to come first.
First things first, always. But you can call in tomorrow, and you can ask any questions you want of the candidates we'll have here. You're
going to have Rocky, I assume.
Yes, and we may also have his vice presidential candidate. I'm not sure if he'll be available, but if so, we'll have them both.
Well, I guess I got a little confused here, because there's two Rockies running for president, and I've been looking at the wrong one, but I finally found the Rocky you have, thanks to a post you put on Facebook, and I still want to hear more what he has to say.
Good.
I still can't tell you how I'm gonna vote in November.
Well,
But I'm willing to listen to other candidates.
well, I think that's important. And anybody who morally feels impossible to vote for either of the two major party candidates, I would strongly recommend that Rocky is a good alternative. I would love to see Rocky take the state of Utah, for example, but the one thing that I think is absolutely critical is we've got to make absolutely sure that Hillary does not become the president. That would be, in my opinion, a total disaster.
No, and that's what I mentioned last week is that our only hope in that may be to get somebody like Rocky to take just enough states to keep either Trump or Hillary from getting to 270. And Utah could do it by itself.
That would be worthwhile. That would be clearly worthwhile.
Yes, and that would very likely keep Hillary out of the White House, and that may be the only way we can do it right now. Because
I would love to see either Pence or Cruz in the White House, because these people are constitutionally sound.
Yes, and I read something, but I didn't get a chance to confirm it further, but apparently the RNC is putting in a contingency plan for Trump.
Really? Tell me more about that.
I wish I did know more about it, but I read it somewhere, and I just haven't had a chance to go further with it. And, it's certainly possible. I think there's a lot of people out there that, like me, that would like to see Pence at the top of the ticket. And I learned that from the vice presidential debate, is why I would like him at the top of the ticket.
He was very impressive.
Yes.
And I was impressed with him yesterday. There were those who thought that he was going to separate himself from Trump, and it was quite the opposite. And his endorsement yesterday of Trump spoke volumes of his character.
Yes, it did. Well, we'll shift. Let's go to the debate then. Again, the media says Hillary won, but again, I don't think that's so important as it is the candidate saying what you believe in. And secondly, I didn't think there was a clear winner. Yes, Trump was more poised and more ready. He went on the attack, against Hillary, but again, I watched the debate, and that's just what I got out of it.
Well, I think that's very important. The thing that astounds me is Hillary calling Trump a liar, calling him a serial liar, when she wouldn't know the truth if it bit her in the ankle or higher up her anatomy. And
I know what you're saying, Mills. You don't have to do any more than that. But yeah, I just can't trust Hillary at all. And it's that easy. Oh, here's something. I'm scanning so fast I can't even look at anything because I'm trying to concentrate on this full phone call, but Clinton lead in double digits. Just a headline there I happened to see.
Anyone who votes for Hillary is voting for the death of our freedom. And the tragedy is people don't recognize that. They don't realize what an enemy of the Constitution she is.
Yeah. Well, I thought of something, and maybe it's a saying, and it's an anti-Hillary saying, but that's probably a good thing for what we're talking about. And I guess it's kind of like a campaign slogan, but it says this: a vote for Hillary is a vote for tyranny.
And that is a truth.
And
My
that's
gosh,
what scares me.
she asked her followers to confront a man, and first she had her security team escort him out of the meeting she was at in Detroit. Then she asked her followers to follow him out and intervene with him because he was wearing a T-shirt with her husband's picture on it, and it said rapist. And she wanted to deny him the freedom of expression simply because her husband is accused of having raped more than one woman. And if she's willing to use her power that way. And last night, I almost choked when, after the debate, the offhand comment that Trump made, remember the confrontation where she was talking about, we're really lucky that you weren't in charge of the law, and he just made the offhand comment, yeah, you'd be in jail. He wasn't saying that he would put her there or that he would have the power to do that, but if he were in charge of the law, it would be universally applied. It wouldn't give her special privileges. And they turned that into a reference to Adolf Hitler, which just made me shake my head in disbelief.
Well, yeah. And I remember that comment, and personally I think Hillary should be in jail just for the mishandling of classified information.
Yes.
It doesn't matter whether the information is compromised, you mishandle it. Being in the military, I know you mishandle it, you're in a lot of trouble.
No questions.
Yeah.
Well, listen, since you're in the military, what do you think of our adding Military Monday to our programming?
Actually, I was going to suggest expand Thursday to include the military and fire. But yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Well, starting next Monday, we're going to be adding Military Monday to our, and then Thursday is Thursday Blue for the police officers.
I think you need to add some fire department people to one of those shows.
Great idea. Yeah, I think they need to be celebrated, no question.
And yeah, I think that's a great idea, Military Monday.
Well, you can count on it. A week from today, that's what we'll be doing. And I was sort of warming to that by bringing in these real life stories. I appreciate your call and having you comment on last night's debate.
Thank you, Mills.
You take care, my friend.
All right.
Going back to some of these real life military stories. Now, remember, the reason I'm adding this is I want to make it clear I'm not trying to glorify war. I want to present you with some cold, hard facts. And Dominic King was with the 7th Marine Regiment, 1st Marine Division, and he was served between August of 2004 and March 2005 in Fallujah. He had also served an earlier tour in Iraq from March to June of 2003. And this is his writing. Quote, "It's gruesome, just beyond the realm of a horror film. We had a lot of pretty bad IEDs, and that, for those of you who are not familiar, stands for improvised explosive devices. But for me," he said, "the one that really marked it was an Army unit that got hit by an IED in a drainage culvert right outside of Habanilla. They had filled a drainage culvert with explosives and blew up an armored personnel carrier. They knew we were in deep trouble at that point because when we drove up to the scene, the hole in the road was so big that an Abrams tank on the scene couldn't drive over the hole. It had to go clear around it. There were the remnants of 4 or 5 guys spread over 600 square yards. You had to walk a grid. It was just like a police scene. We had different colored flags that marked personal belongings, whether it was a wallet or a picture or anything like that, and we had to take photos of the scene so that if it ever had to be reconstructed, they could reconstruct it. It was so huge that when I stood up in the Humvee with the camera to take a picture, there were thousands of these flags in the field. It was surreal knowing that all these flags represented something. We'd done some recovers, and this was our biggest one in the whole time we were there. It became the landmark event for us. So everything got treated as reverently as if it were a whole body, even if it was just a leg or an arm or, God forbid, a hand or, torso. Everything got treated the same. If you put 4 Marines to work on a body and then you had 4 Marines doing the paperwork on a leg, and it got its own body bag with its own tag and got carried to the plane on its own stretchers like a full body would be. And so if you got, 9 arms and 10 legs and parts of another one, they'd all go in separate bags home. We'd get them all the time on the plane so they'd all go home together at the same time, but every part got its own bag. The chaplain said prayers over the body parts. I don't think he saw the mess in Vietnam that he got to see in our unit, but he was an awesome old man. He came over no matter what time it was. If it wasn't ashes blowing in the wind, we grabbed it. I mean, we recovered bodies out of a burnt helicopter and that were literally just cremated. I mean, they were just vertebrae and ribs, and that literally was just cremated. I mean, the only reason we knew that we had 2 was because we counted the vertebrae, and there were too many vertebrae to be one. Our chaplain prayed over that, and he said part of that is somebody's son, and it's all you got left, and we're here on recovery. And there was a piece of paper blowing around in the breeze, so we picked it up. It was a sonogram of a baby. It was dated, and that poor guy never will see his kid. He had it with him, but he was blowing around the field, so we picked it up. I remember the chief warrant officer looking at me, and he couldn't say anything at the time. I think we would have both lost it. He had the thing in his hand, and we were looking at it and just looking at each other, put it in the box, and decided to deal with it when we got back to the base. That was from Daniel B. Connor, Mortuary Affairs, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, February to September 2004, the Sunni Triangle, reported in the Marine Corps Times, Marine of the Year. And then the Dominant King story that I was going to tell you about. In War, the best of you shines. There was actually one dog that we almost had to shoot because he was standing next to a body eating it. As we went to pick it up, he stood there and growled at us, and he wouldn't let us come near it. And I think somebody threw a rock or something to shoo him away, but then there were other dogs that would run through the city with human feet in their mouth and other things. I was pretty desensitized at the time. It really didn't register as it should have. I mean, a dog running through the city with a femur in its mouth should have registered as something a lot more than it actually did. It seemed reasonable at the time that a dog would try and chew on the bodies. That was Dominic King, 7th Marine Regiment. You see, war is not all glory and fun. Some of war is pretty gross, pretty grim. And that's why we want to honor those who put their lives on the line to fight these battles to keep us free. And that's one of the reasons that I am so worried about this upcoming election. Because if, God forbid, Hillary becomes the president, we're going to see war right here in our own homeland. I see it coming. And it worries me. It worries me a lot. There's going to be an uprising here soon, the story starts. We knew there was going to be a civil war in November of '03. We said, it's coming. There's going to be an uprising here soon, and you could feel it in the streets. Muqtada al-Sadar's military started these protests. These guys were wearing masks all the time. November 3rd was about the 6-month period for us, and we hadn't yet provided adequate water or sewage, electricity to the Iraqis, so all of a sudden we were no longer America the Liberator. Now we were the invaders who can't supply what we're supposed to be giving them. Their attitudes toward us changed. It's hard to explain it. More of a feeling. Examples, on our patrol of June 3rd, we'd drive up the streets and you'd get around a neighborhood where people would be out there clapping and cheering and giving you a thumbs up, saying, "Go Bush," thanking you for everything you're doing. You could stop by, you could walk into a tea shop, and people would be more interested in what can you provide us than hating you. But that November, we wouldn't go in a tea shop without a force because we didn't know what to expect. The first summer, I'd walk around with the schools myself, my sergeant, and while my guys were outside having no fear at all, no worry that we were putting the kids in the school in danger by just being there. Well, that changed. Once the Iraqis realized we weren't providing what we were supposed to be providing, we started being seen as the enemy. Then going into schools would put the kids in danger. Weird. Because the Iraqis weren't hostile toward us one-on-one. They never did that. Sometimes there was anger, but we were the guys with the guns. They weren't the guys with the guns. At least we had them one-on-one. From Jonathan Powers, the Gunners, Armor 1st Division, May 23rd through July of 2004. Gunnery Palace, Baghdad. War isn't fun. We don't want it here. We don't want it at all, but it's coming. And as sure as I sit here, Hillary's victory will make that an absolute certainty. And we know from certain prophecies that when the currency crunch happens, and it could be as early as 4 days from now. I'm not saying it will, but it could be, because the prophecies are it will begin in Chicago as a result of a currency crisis, and the next currency crisis is scheduled for just 4 days hence. Friday, the 14th, the same day as our rally on the steps. This is not Chicago. It's not going to start here. But it's coming. We just killed a bunch of dudes who were on our side, the quote begins. We were firing at them with small arms, and the Iraqis' truck got shot up. I noticed at the corner of my eye a civilian vehicle, a white kind of like Cadillac-looking vehicle driving directly into the firefight. And before, they must have realized if they were just in the center of the firefight, and they thought that the easiest way through was just to floor it to get by. Well, the crew beside me freaked out when they saw the vehicle speeding up, and it was hauling ass toward us, and one of our guys opened fire, and I saw the windshield kind of spider and turn white after it broke. I saw a lot of blood, and the vehicle shot off the edge of the road almost immediately, just jerked and went away from us off the side of the road. I found out later there was a man cowering off the side of the road. The road kind of dipped down into a dirty embankment with a lot of brush, and a man was there when the firefight started and must have been hiding down because he had a bicycle right behind him. He must have been riding his bike and just dropped the bike and dove down into the ditch. The car ended up running him over, killing him. And the car stopped in the dirt. I think the driver died immediately, but I think there was another man in the vehicle that fell out the door facing away from us. I started firing my M60 because I saw movement on the ground there, and they were yelling that there were shots coming from our left. I couldn't see anybody. For an instant, I thought that somebody from the car was firing back at us. I didn't really think that there were any sort of insurgent or anything. I was thinking that this guy just got shot up, and now he must think he has to fight to get out of this. My weapon wouldn't fire a burst, and I was basically sitting up there in the truck almost sniping at the movement that I could see down near the tires. A lot of smoke and wreckage. It was hard to see, but the firefight calmed down to a point where we were just sitting there. And there was a difficult moment where I'd stopped fighting and the combat just died down. So the Iraqi army guys finally got a couple of trucks together, and they came up from behind us, and once they got on the scene and saw what was happening, they started freaking out. We didn't know why exactly at first, and then we learned that the guy we shot weren't insurgents, but the deputy governor's bodyguards. Now, the moment I heard that, I was just like screwed up. I mean, I was just floored. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that. The guys we shot probably thought at first when we got there, great, the Americans are here, cool. They look back and all of a sudden they're getting shot to blazes, and it was like, what the Sam Hill did we do? What I mean. We have 3 dead Iraqis. They were the deputy governor's bodyguard, 2 dead civilians, 1 injured civilian. I mean, everybody got shot that was there. It wasn't a single person that didn't get hit by either shrapnel from a grenade or shot several times. I think there were 2 guys that actually lived that were bodyguards. I think each of them was shot twice and they still lived. I was so angry. When I got back, some of the guys were laughing at it. Some of the guys, it was their first time in combat, and they were so excited about it. It felt like they gone through some kind of rite of passage, I guess. I was just thinking, you guys are blanking idiots. You know what I mean? We just killed off a bunch of blanking dudes who were on our side, and I asked one of them, would you be so happy if they were Americans? He just looked at me and like, what the blank are you blanking on my parade? I saw one of the guys a few months later, one of the guys that we'd shot. He came up to us and he said he had a buddy that was, and he was limping, showed us a huge scar. His buddy who spoke better English said he was telling us, you did this, you guys did this. And he was kind of proud of the scar. Really bizarre people. I think they were just going up to Americans and saying, like, you're the Americans, you did this to my friend. That report is from Garrett Reppenhagen, Cavalry Scout, Snipe 2-63 Armor Division, 1st Marine Division, September 2004 to February 2005, Babkova. War isn't fun. But we owe our freedom to those men and women who put their lives on the line. And we want to honor them. That's why Monday, starting next week, will be Military Monday. And of course, we have Blue Thursday. Got a lot of fun surprises coming for you. And I want you to know we appreciate every single one of our listeners. And we got some fun things in store for you. Now, there are lots of untold true stories that are heroic, that are uplifting. Many of these come from the Second World War. Yeah, I know you've seen a lot of war movies and read a lot of war stories, etc., but these are true stories that haven't been told. Now, it's not always presented that way, but World War II is one of the bloodiest wars in human history. Did you know that? There were millions involved in the fighting, and sadly, millions died. Unsurprisingly, there are a lot of amazing stories from the conflict that, well, yeah, some of them are well known. And new stories periodically arise, as recently uncovered encounter of Charlie Brown and Fritz Stangler. They've come up with 10 stories that are far less known, but are no less amazing. The Solheim railway explosion is one of those. June 2nd, 2 days before D-Day. Benjamin Gimbert and his fireman, James Nightall, were in charge of a freight train. Benjamin was the driver. They were delivering a trainload of bombs to U.S. Air Force in White Colon, Essex, United Kingdom. And as they approached the village of Soham in Cambridgeshire, Benjamin realized that the wagon that was coupled directly behind the locomotive was on fire. That's never a good thing, but this fire was very dangerous because that train was carrying tons of explosives. So he stopped the train. James came down from the footplate to uncouple the blazing wagon. Only 128 meters, that's about 420 feet from the station at Soham. They tried to ditch the wagon in the open countryside before the bombs exploded. They failed. 7 minutes after Benjamin originally saw the fire, the wagon exploded. It flattened the station building, damaged 600 others, threw Benjamin almost 200 meters, that's almost 600 feet away, killed 2 other railway workers who had stayed to stop another train that was headed for the wagon's path. And despite the crater the explosion created that was 20 feet deep, the track was up and running again by that evening. Both Benjamin and James were awarded the George Cross, the highest award for non-combat bravery in the British Commonwealth. And their actions were commemorated with 2 different plaques in Soheim. But no movie, not yet. Then there was the ready-made British resistance. After the disastrous campaign in France in 1940, the remnants of the British Expeditionary Force and the Free French forces found themselves critically short of vehicles, ammunition, and other equipment, and that led to the formation of the well-known Home Guard. But Winston Churchill also ordered the creation of a secret underground army that was known simply as the auxiliary units. And did you know they remained secret until the 1990s? Long after the war. Its 3,500 members were recruited mainly from the civilian population and trained in a variety of tasks, including stealth killing, explosives, unarmed combat, and sabotage. To avoid suspicions, they were assigned to Home Guard units. Despite the shortage, they were equipped with the best weapons available, including Thompson submachine guns and PIA-T anti-tank rockets. They were also given silenced pistols and rifles, sticky bombs, single-shot cartridges that could penetrate steel at almost over 300 feet. Their bases were built about 15 feet underground, held 6 to 8 men, plus all their equipment and weeks' worth of supplies. In the event of an invasion, the plan was to attack the German communication lines, railways, airfields, fuel, supply dumps, senior German officers. Maybe most chillingly of all, they had orders to kill any British person collaborating with the occupying German forces. They anticipated the attack by Germany would succeed in overrunning Great Britain. And one advantage the units had was the German army would not expect organized resistance so soon after an invasion. And the fatality of such a mission was certain, but luckily the auxiliary units never went into action, although many of its men joined other units after it was disbanded. These are all stories none of us have heard. And that's the kind of thing we will bring you on Military Monday, because these stories deserve to be brought out. Operation Jericho is an example. February 18th, 1944, 18 of the legendary Mosquito fighter bombers of the Royal Air Force, the Royal New Zealand Air Force, and Royal Australian Air Force embarked on a plan to attack the Amiens prison in northwest France to free about 700 members of the French resistance that were imprisoned there. And the weather that day was so bad that one of the RNZAF pilots thought it was either some form of practice or a practical joke. Nevertheless, the group flew across the channel, and they flew about 50 feet above the wave. That's all. 5 had to turn back because of radio and engine problems, now down to 13 planes. Group Captain Charles Pickard carried on with the raid as planned, and at 12:01 p.m. the bombers attacked the prison wall to allow the prisoners a route of escape. They went on to demolish the blocks where German officers were standing guard. Many of them were killed or wounded. 2 mosquitoes also attacked the nearby train station, buying the prisoners time while the German garrison was distracted. Only 2 aircraft were lost in the attack, including one that was flown by Pickard. And while 258 prisoners escaped, 102 were killed in the raid, another 155 were captured. Even today, no one's sure who ordered the raid or why. But the sheer skill and courage shown by the mosquito is undeniable. Now, this is one I had never heard, but I'll come back to that. We've got a caller. Let's go to the caller in the 410 prefix. The number is 388. Caller, your first name?
Hi, Mills. This is Nick.
Nick, welcome, sir.
From Baltimore. I just tuned in the last few minutes. I'm sorry because it's been so hectic here. I don't know whether I didn't want to hijack your show.
No, that's fine.
But
I'm curious. How are you doing? I understand you had some problems.
I'm doing fine. I'm doing my physical therapy, and I'm getting a lot better and getting stronger. And I've talked to Ed, and Ed is in the transitional assisted living place. He's going to be coming home soon, so he'll be back on the phone with you shortly, in a couple of weeks. So
I will look forward to that.
Oh yeah, and well, I have been listening, and I just wanted to chime in on yesterday's event, and I will just say this: I thought what Mr. Trump did was brilliant.
He did handle himself well, I think. He really did.
Yes. Yeah, and I just think I hope and pray that he makes it, because he gets in there, because I think we will all prosper. Because if Hillary gets in, forget it. And I don't think she's going to get in.
We're toast if she gets in. I really believe it will mean the end of the American Republic as we know it.
Yes, it will. And there goes not only your Second Amendment. I know you're running out of time. Your Second Amendment and your First Amendment is going to go. She's already said it. But no one has ever stood up to the Clintons like Mr. Trump did, and I was just in orbit yesterday.
Well, I'm so glad to hear from you. I have been concerned about you and about Ed, and I'm glad you found us.
Well, we're here, and it's great to have you, and I'll call you again probably this week.
Good. Now, tomorrow we're going to have a presidential candidate on the show. I don't want you to miss that.
Okay. All right. Who are you going to have? Oh, is it
Rocky Giordani. He is a presidential candidate for the Independent American Party. Straight shooter, very conservative.
Oh, he's a good guy. I've heard him speak. I'll be listening.
Look forward to it. I hope you'll call in as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mills. You have a great night, and have a good night, everybody out there in Radioland.
Be well, be happy. Thank you very much.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
That wraps it, friends. We appreciate your listening. We will be back tomorrow with presidential candidate Rocky Giordani.